There you go. So, once again, how lucky are we to have Shelly with us and have been with us for a little while now, Shelly. So thank you for staying with us. We absolutely love having you discuss all these fabulous movies that you pick. And they all know your CV also. And you getting ready to go on a cruise?
Not till September. Not till
Not till
September.
September. Oh, so people, there's still time to sign up.
Yeah.
So without further ado, we looking forward to hearing how do you pronounce it anyways?
Tsotsi.
So,
Tsotsi.
and Tsotsi was quite the character.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it snuck up on me, and maybe it snuck up on you as I'm starting to watch it. I'm saying, so where is this going? And wow, did it get there?
Yeah.
Shelly, it's
Well,
all yours. Take it away, and thank you so very much.
oh, thank you, Marilyn, and thank you everybody for coming. It's nice to see you tonight, in a nice, safe, dry place. So yes, Tsotsi. It is from 2005 from South Africa. The director's name is Gavin Hood. It premiered in 2005, was written and directed by Gavin Hood, as well as directed, and he is an international director. He was born in South Africa. He was a lawyer, and then he went for a master's degree at USC in filmmaking and started to make and produce films. This is an adaptation of the novel entitled Tsotsi. It is by, I don't know how many of you know who Athol Fugard is. Athol Fugard is considered one of the world's greatest living playwrights. He is from South Africa. He wrote Master Harold and the Boys, Bina and Bozeman and Lena, several other plays about South Africa, about apartheid. Anyway, Tsotsi is about a young street thug who steals a car only to discover a baby in the back seat. That's the cut line. You can imagine what people must have been thinking when they read that. It went on to earn 23 international awards, and in 2006, it became the first South African film and the first African film not made in French to win the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. Set in Soweto, in a township of shacks on the edges of Johannesburg, Tsotsi, with the name derived from Tsotsi Tal, meaning criminal, is a young street, as I said, a young street thug. He's often at a young age compelled to live a life of extreme social and psychological deprivation. He is a feral being with little regard for the feelings of others, having hardened himself against any feelings of compassion, ruled only by impulse and instinct. He is fueled by the fear he instills in others. With no name and no past, he exists only in the angry present. Tsotsi heads up his own gang of social misfits. Boston, a failed would-be teacher; Butcher, a cold-blooded killer; and Op, a dim-witted heavy. In the opening sequence, we are immediately thrust into a world of risk and chance, or fate and fortune, what have you, with the dice game. It is a symbol of what is to come. But as we see, life for these characters is anything but fun and games. Traveling to the train terminal, overflowing with humanity that we see at the beginning, and a giant sign that prevails during the film and several other places that says AIDS affects all of us, sort of puts the atmosphere of the film in context, what was going on in Africa at that time, and we see that sign more than once in more than one place, and it adds to his own background, as we will see later on in the film. They spot a man with a wad of cash. They follow him onto a crowded train, stab him, hold him up while he dies, with no one really noticing, and they flee off the train with everyone else with his money. Boston, who seems too intelligent to even be in this group, asks Tsotsi if he understands decency.
Mhm.
decency, asking him his real name. What's your real name? Tsotsi's not a name. And he asks him if he has a father and a mother or even a dog, provoking Tsotsi to beat him violently, sort of waking him out of his stupor. Running off to a vast divide between the shacks and the city, he starts to run, and we get the first glimpse of a shot of him as a little boy also running away. The first of flashbacks to come that will reveal more of his childhood and why he is the way he is. Standing in the pouring rain in an upscale suburb of homes, he flashes back again, and we see an image of children living in a makeshift shelter or large pipes. And it is in that moment he sees a woman drive up in a car. He steals the car, shoots the woman, and unbeknownst to him, drives away with the baby in the back seat. That his life will be altered. Tsotsi may be violent. He may even be a killer, but he cannot kill a baby. He takes it home with him in a shopping bag, no less. And it is interesting that that shopping bag represents a demarcation from where he comes from. It's a shopping bag from a presumably upscale store that he carries the baby back to the shacks with. He's ill-equipped to deal with the baby when he gets home to his apartment above another shack. He innately tries his best, though. He cleans it and diapers it with newspapers that he finds. He feeds it canned milk, even dancing to the music that he puts on the TV to try and calm the baby. We somehow feel he will not abandon this baby because he knows what it is to be abandoned himself and begins to project all of his own self-pity on the child. When he knows he needs money, they go to the station again. This time he's accosted by a crippled man in a makeshift wheelchair who he follows under the trestle, where he will try to force him to stand up. And realizing he can't ask him what happened to him and why he chooses to live like a crippled dog, the man answers, to feel the sun on my face and the warmth on my hands. In other words, to feel alive. At which point, Tsotsi, at a loss for words, leaves him with his money. When he finds the baby, he comes back and finds the baby covered with ants. He realizes he has to do something. He remembers seeing a woman, Miriam, with a baby, walking with the baby on her back, and he sees her again. He follows her home and at gunpoint forces her to nurse the baby. If we are looking, we see the home she's made. We see a contrast to his apartment in her home. It's bright, it's clean, it's colorful. An oasis in hell of a place. He tells her the baby is his when asked where the mother is. He asks her why one of her mobiles is made of rusty metal. She tells him she was sad and intuits that she was happy when she made the one with the colored glass. It's sort of a beginning for him. It's a moment where he's beginning to understand emotion. He never understood emotions, and now he's beginning to understand. And while she bathes the child, he again flashes back to his own mother, calling him David. He does have a name. We realize she is dying of AIDS, and his father, abusive, cruelly sends him from the house, and he kicks and cripples the dog, much the way Tsotsi mentioned to the man, "You're like a crippled dog," reminding us why he told that story, and finally running away himself across that border. He takes the baby to the pipes where he lived. Nothing has changed there. We see a society that has stayed the same. Kids are still abandoned and still homeless. No one cares for them, and they won't even take the baby when it's offered. They said, "We can't take care of it." He returns to Miriam to nurse the baby again and learns of how her husband was murdered coming home one night. And there seemed to be a look when he saw the picture. Perhaps it was he, or maybe Butcher, who killed her husband. And what we are witnessing is Tsotsi's gradual change as he tries to protect a helpless child. He encounters a giving mother in Miriam. He asks Boston to come and live with him. He goes back and asks Boston to come and live with him, telling him he will help him to get the money for his teaching license. He takes Butcher and App back to the house where they hold back to the original home where he kidnapped the baby, where they hold the father captive while they ransack it. Tsotsi tries to control Butcher, but while he's upstairs taking the formula and the toys, an alarm goes off that the father had in his hand. Butcher tries to shoot him, and Tsotsi kills Butcher. He returns to Miriam. He is shaken. He is afraid as she serves him his food. We hear him say, "Thank you." For the first time in the film, he's acknowledged someone else. He says, "Thank you." Maybe this is the first time in his life he said thank you. She knows what he's done, telling him, "You can't give back the mother's legs, but you can give her back her baby," offering to take the baby back herself. He refuses. Miriam has become a quiet counterpoint to Tsotsi's apparent rage. She knows many like him, but because she comes from this town, but she senses something in him, feelings he has to ignore in order to gain back his soul. He has to ignore the rage. He has to ignore what he's become. She is reasonable with him. Her maternal instincts cause her to make reasonable decisions dealing with him to protect her own family, her baby, the other baby, and eventually Tsotsi himself. As he starts to leave, he asks, "If I take it back, will I be able to come back here?" She just looks at him. She nods. Yes. And there's a smile coming to her lips, an awareness, a hopeful reassurance that he's doing the right thing. He apologizes to Boston, asking for forgiveness. Boston complies. It's as if he's making an ascension at that point. He's doing, he goes, when the police arrive at his apartment, Boston doesn't know where he went. And we see him arriving at the train station. And it's interesting, for the first time in the film, Tsotsi is not wearing black. He's not wearing dark colors. He's wearing a white shirt. He passes the man in the wheelchair. He bows before him and gives him money, seeking forgiveness again as he ascends to the mountaintop in the sunlight, looking down on a choir. And he knows now what he must do. The final scene develops with a great deal of tension. I know you must have been feeling it as I was, and with several possible outcomes. We're wondering what's going to happen now. But the movie ends leaving us to wonder, and it leaves us to wonder what happens. The director chose to leave the audience hanging with the belief that it leaves more to talk about in terms of meaning, as well as Tsotsi's fate. This is a simple and yet profound story. It's told without any sentimentalizing of poverty, or to make Tsotsi more colorful or sympathetic than he should be. If he deserves redemption, it isn't for suddenly becoming a good man, but for allowing himself to be distracted from being a bad man. Tsotsi is compelled to confront his own brutal nature and face the consequences of his actions. The film puts a human face on both the victims and the perpetrators of violent crime, and is ultimately a story of hope and triumph of love over rage. Presley Chweneyagae as Tsotsi is nothing short of masterly. Considering he was only 21, and this was his very first screen role. He had never acted before. He has the hard eyes, the face of a tough childhood, and a sullenness that speaks 1,000 words. It is mostly the story that exists inside his head, and through his actions, we see and understand his transformation. His performance is also underscored with the cinematography, how carefully framed he is and lit, how carefully lit, that the camera zooms slowly in on his face to reveal his thoughts. It was the director's belief that there always has to be more going on within a character than what a character says. Winning awards for his performance, he has since gone on to play in a number of popular roles in film and TV in South Africa. And in the film's final 8 minutes, the actor speaks. He only speaks a mere 10 words, and yet the play of his face and eyes, when he starts to cry, when he starts to shake, speaks volumes about the emotion that's tearing at his heart. As Miriam, Terry Fido is her name, she also gives a tremendously powerful, underplayed performance. So much more with her expressions than words could offer. This was her screen debut as well. Tsotsi is the only novel ever written by Athol Fugard. At its heart, the book is an internal psychological dialogue of the Tsotsi character on a journey of awakening that leads to the rediscovery of his memory and his humanity. The book was written in the early 60s, and while originally set in the 1950s, before apartheid was ended, it remained unpublished until 1980, by which time the plays of Athol Fugard, the ones I mentioned, Bozeman and Lena, Sizwe Banzi is Dead, and Master Harold and the Boys, had become major international stage successes, winning Tony Awards, winning awards in Great Britain and around the world. The music score reflects the culture of the township. It is a type of music that's known as Kwaito, which provided the perfect drive for the story. It's most popular among the Black youth of South Africa, and it's kind of similar to hip hop, with lyrics sung, rapped, and shouted, as you heard in the film. And it's interesting to note that the sound of Kwaito originated from the use of European instruments by African laborers. The soundtrack for Tsotsi is at one moment beautiful and pounding. The next, it becomes even more spiritual, lyrical, and soft, as when he's on the mountaintop. The cinematography uses warm golden colors accompanied by brightly colored African clothing and upbeat Kwaito music to contrast with Tsotsi's character in dark colors, living in a dark apartment. There are also wide shots of the shantytown contrasted by the clean streets of suburban houses behind high security gates. The wide shots of the train station and its humanity is contrasted by Tsotsi alone on the tracks and under the bridge with the man in the wheelchair. I was struck, one thing that struck me about the film was the use of the word decency. Decency. It's first introduced by Boston. Perhaps he's showing his remorse after the killing on the train. We see him get sick. He throws up over it. And he says to Tsotsi, decency. Do you know what decency is? And provokes him into that beating. The man on the train was also a symbol of decency. As he buys his tie, we see him standing there, feeling proud of himself, looking smartly to go to work, and they tear him down. Miriam displays decency in her home, her creativity, her care, and the way she's coping with life after a tragedy. Even the man in the wheelchair expresses decency with the way he decorates his chair, his nice shoes. Did you notice his shoes? And ultimately, Tsotsi's killing of Butcher can be construed as an aspect of decency. And ultimately, it is the act or acts of decency that are the final triumph of the film, the act of returning the baby. And I have to tell you, there were alternate endings to this movie. There were actually 3 endings shot in the film, and I've seen all 3 endings. One is the ending we've seen, which is the ending he arrived at, and you'll understand why when I tell you the other 2. The first ending he shot was Tsotsi being shot in the chest. He goes into the bag and he takes out a milk bottle. But before they see that it's a milk bottle, he gets shot and he's killed. In another ending, he goes to take out the bottle. They shoot him, but they wound him and he runs away. And he runs back into the townships to disappear. And in the ending we've seen, which I think is the right one, we see his hands go up, and we're left to wonder now what will happen to Tsotsi. I thought it was a brilliant film, and it is an expose of a divided South Africa, even among its Black population, that the townships have not come very far since the end of apartheid. And the performances are wonderful. As I said, the cinematography, the music, it is a complete production, and one which reveals a South Africa to the world. So I hope you appreciated it. Now I'd like to hear from you and your thoughts on the movie. So who would like to go first? Arlette, I saw your hand go up. I saw you too, Marilyn. Just hold on. Get Arlette.
Well, to me, the most profound saying was when Miriam says to Tsotsi, you cannot give her legs back, but you can give her the baby. And as I'm saying this to you, I've got goosebumps all over. This was a difficult movie for me to watch. The acting was superb. And there were so many ins and outs and twists, like when Tsotsi beat up Boston. Was that his name? Boston. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And in the beginning, later on, we find out that he had actually taken him under his wing because he was drinking so much and trying to make him a good person, and then ends up in his twisted mind of just beating the hell out of him without even a thought, without even, well, what's the word that I want? Like serial killers. They don't have to think, they just do it. That was very, very profound when later we find out that he had taken him under his wing, and look what he did to him. And then tried to forgive himself by bringing him into his home and start all over again. And forgiveness just goes so far, unfortunately. But I did enjoy the film. It was excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. Marilyn? Marilyn, you have to unmute.
Okay, get that. Loved the movie. I thought that each character was so incredibly developed, including that baby, which I could not believe that this little baby acted the part. But I saw it as so many crippled people physically and emotionally. And at the end, I really feel that he survived. He's going to go to prison, but he survived as a person, as a human being. And that decency, I do believe, became entwined in him. So I agree that was the only ending that could have been, and they did a good job. Thank you again.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's the ending is he was a child. He was essentially reborn at the end of the film. He had never grown up. He ran away from his parents. He, grew up in those pipes, and he was totally, asocial. He was alone. And the first time we see him is, if you remember that shot of him, they're playing dice and he's standing out on the balcony without a shirt on. And then we see his face, and you look at his face and his eyes were dead. it was just a remarkable performance on his part. But it was as if he was that baby at the end, crying, and needing to be saved. Okay. Linda Pava.
Maybe I'm reading into this too deeply, and I love the movie, and it was draining. I loved the music. I loved everything about it, but I'd like to believe that there's a little bit of good, even in the people that are as bad as he was, that we're born, maybe some people will disagree, innocently. And because of his life and because of the way his parents treated him, he became hardened and without a conscience, really. And then conscience was coming. It was being brought back, and you could see that little bit of kindness and good. He loved that baby as much as somebody like him could. And what really got me was the way that baby kept looking at him. The baby just looked right into his eyes, and he was able to quiet the baby. They met somehow. Without really cajoling him or shaking him, the baby would stop. So I'd like to think that, as the other lady said, that somehow he became better, after his imprisonment, and, that they let him out. But he was a vicious killer. He could just go around killing anybody without even thinking a second thought about it.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. I will tell you, it's interesting. The novel ends quite differently. Now, remember, I told you the novel was written in the 1950s. And this is before, apartheid was abolished, and before Mandela and all of these things. And so there was apartheid, and most of the action happens within the shanty town, but he winds up with the same characters. It basically follows the same trajectory, except in the end, he doesn't take the baby back to them. He wants to take care of the baby, and the white population wants to destroy the town. And he has hidden the baby in an area that they're going to destroy. And he goes back when he hears what they're going to do to save the baby, and he jumps as he's saving the baby. He's holding the baby. A wall comes down on him, and he dies. But it's the way he ends it is that they see him with a smile on his face, because Miriam, in a sense, is the one who redeems him in the story. She's more crucial to his redemption in the story. But it's interesting because the times have changed, and Gavin Hood, the director, wanted to reflect the idea that times did change. Look where the other couple was living, in a upscale suburb. All of these things didn't exist back then when the novel was written. So it's, in a sense, he's redirecting the culture within the film to update the story. But yes, he found his humanity. He found his humanity. Karen, is that who that is? Yeah, go ahead. You got on mute. There you go.
You still mute?
Okay.
There we are. I got it. Okay. I enjoyed watching him evolve, beginning to think about decency and evolving from that. And I would like to think that possibly the man that the father of the baby might help him once he gets out of prison. But I don't know. Just that's a hope.
Well, that's a good hope. I mean, he saved his life.
Right, he did,
we can't
yes.
forget that he did save his life. And I think, he was aware of it, and I think he surprised him. I think he was surprised by Tsotsi's behavior, not just in killing Butcher, but in the way he came back with the baby. And the way they told the police, put the guns down, I will handle this. He sort of
Right.
felt that he was able to, touch Tsotsi in a way to give him the baby. It just, it was a miracle moment, if you will. I think one of the things that is important about the film is, well, we also have to realize, and it would be difficult for, is how those living in South Africa, especially that area, Johannesburg, how they react to a story like this, because it's using the music that they used to. The costuming in the film is also important from a cultural point of view. Is the guy who is that has all the money, the one that buys the car from him, the second car that he steals, and he's in the bar, and Boston also accosts him with the word decency. He's dressed in a purple suit. It's sort of a badge of prominence. These are people who are in these townships who sort of run everything. As I said, Tsotsi is a criminal, and this is something that arose in the townships out of the 50s. They were called Tsotsi Tal, criminals. And that's why in the novel he gives them the name Tsotsi, which is not a name. We hear that his name is David, and it's the first time that, in a sense, he's given a name in the film. In the novel, he says, "My name is David." He realizes when he says to her, he's saying David for the child. It's really him he's talking about. He's telling her indirectly, "My name is David." It is interesting to see all of this unfolding on the screen.
And the other thing is how he was holding the baby at the end.
Yes.
He was very protective, he wasn't going to harm the baby.
Yeah, and the baby was holding his hand, was holding his finger.
Yeah.
I mean, it was lovely. It was lovely.
Yes.
Thank you, Karen. Marilyn?
So originally, I put my hand up to ask how the book ended, and then you stole my thunder.
I'm sorry.
That took care of that one, and thank you for explaining that one. Which is interesting because obviously whoever did the screenplay did a marvelous job, and I think it probably made for a better film.
Yes.
Or a more uplifting film with more hope. The other was like a real downer. So yeah, anyway, thank you for answering that question. Back to what Linda said about how Tsotsi became who he was because of his upbringing. I mean, this is universal. Children are not born. I mean, we have to hope that children are born a clean slate and innocent, and it's because of what they experience during their lifetime, unfortunately, leads them to where they become the sociopaths or whatever that they become. But what I really did love to see in the way he evolved is that it took a connection. It took a relationship to the baby, to Miriam, to somebody. But it's always connections and relationships that will be the salvation to take the people who have had such a horrid beginning to get them to evolve in any way, shape, or form. And it's universal. It's not just South Africa. This could be Soweto in South Africa. To me, when I saw this, reminded me of the favelas in Rio. It could have happened the same way there.
Good.
But it just is, you just wish people would be able to make these connections and have these relationships, because there are so many people who had such a raw deal and are the base of why there is so many problems everywhere. It's not just South Africa. But I thought he did a great job in showing this in this film. I'm glad we saw it. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, there is, in speaking about that, there's also, there are shots you don't think about until after, or maybe if you see the film again. But there's one shot, and it's not long. It's the two babies in the bed, and
Yes.
they're surrounded by the toys. Remember the toys he takes from the house? And they're sitting there, and they're both together. Now, these are two children from two different places. One from the township, one from the shanty town, and the other from a wealthy suburb. And the fact, that the two of them are in the same bed, sharing that moment. You talk about the innocence of childhood, and they never would have been brought together otherwise.
True.
And here they are. It does speak volumes. It does speak volumes about people. Well, I'll wait. I want to recommend something for the group after we get finished. Rachel.
I also enjoyed this movie, but I can't say enjoyed because parts of it, I'm a big animal lover. And when I saw that scene, I was like, oh, with the kicking of the dog, I know, it affected me, and I'm going, okay, can I hang in there for this movie? And I'm glad that I did. And also, it's a sign of a psychopath when they actually hurt an animal. So while he ran away when he saw that, so at that juncture, he wasn't in that murderous mind, and that was interesting to see that, at that moment when he ran away, he couldn't take it. He couldn't take that dog was suffering. And also, I thought an interesting part of the movie was very quiet scene when they were robbing the house, and he walks into the baby's room, and he sees the beautiful painted room with all the formula and all this other stuff, things that he doesn't even know what it is.
Yes, he's calm.
And you could see him like look at this like, oh my God, he didn't even know probably this existed, that somebody could live like this. He was so used to what he had. And the heart-wrenching scene at the end was, oh my God, I was crying. I was like in tears. And because especially when the mother came out, and the mother says, and she says it calmly. I can't imagine if I saw my baby in this guy's arms that, is like, had my baby wounded her so that she might not be able to walk. And she's saying, please give me my baby. And the look on her face and his face, I mean, a lot of facial expressions were in this movie, and they were right on point. You know what they were feeling without the words, like you said before. So it was a heart-wrenching movie. It was hard for me to watch, to be honest. It just was, but I'm glad in a way it had a happy ending, that he finally got the decency. He felt it, and he was a changed person. Even if he goes to prison, he was a changed person.
Yes. It's to add to what you were saying, it's when he walks into that baby's room and he does stand there and he looks around. Well, first he walks into the primary bedroom, and he's looking at the bed, and he's, looking at this place. It's something he never would have dreamed of. First of all, it's a house, someplace he never really lived. I mean, we flash back and see how he lived. We can only, it forces us to think, how could he, how did he survive even the years that he did? And he walks into that baby's room and said, this is, what is right? This is the way a child is brought up. This is where a child lives. you know, and it's almost an awakening for him. You know, but he's cognizant enough. He grabs the formula, he grabs the toys, you know, he knows what he's got to take with him. I thought that was great, you know, realizing what he's doing. But all of that, it does force us to think back. The flashbacks, as short as they are in the film, are crucial to giving us an indication of what he's coming from. And then we could fill in a lot of that space, you know, and he fills it in himself when he goes back there and these other kids are there. And we're saying things haven't changed. There's no more apartheid, but look at the way these kids are living. I mean, this is the world. This is the world. It is universal in many ways. Thank you, Rachel. Bonnie?
Yes, I thought when he walked into the main bedroom and he was looking around and he saw the pictures of the parents with the baby.
Yes.
And I think he loved his mother. That initial scene with his mother, you could
Yes.
tell there was tenderness between them and love between the two. And so I think walking into that bedroom, it reminded him of his mother and the love
Yep.
there that he did know as a child, you know, so.
Yeah, for a short period, yes,
for a short
no
period.
question about it. It all, you know, it unfolds in a linear fashion, which makes it easier for us to understand. But it is these flashbacks which do so much to move the story along, to understanding him, that he was a real kid at one point, and then his growth was stunted. You know, this is what we saw. So thank you, Bonnie. Linda?
Hawk has
I
her
just
hand-
wanted to add on
Oh,
to Marilyn's take a few minutes ago. You know, I melted when he said, "Can I come back?" And I felt that that was a positive feeling, that something was really drastically changing in him.
sure. Well,
Like
not
to
only
think
did he
that.
not only did he find, you know, she was also, not only was she something that he could sort of depend on and connect to, she was a mother image.
Mhm.
She was a mother image for
Right.
him. This is something, you know, he lost, and she provided that for him as well. And he understood that. Thank you. Linda Hawk?
Yes, you know, we were talking about all the other things that helped him with the connections and all that, but I thought the main catalyst where it all started was when the Boston, I guess his name was, pressed him there, you know, after that when he was talking about decency, and he pressed him hard. He says, "Don't you have a mother? Don't you have a father? Not even a dog, something?" And then he went berserk because he reached him, you know, so that was the beginning of his road back to humanity. And that's why he went so violent, where I don't think it was like so much that he wanted to do violence there, but that brought it all back to him. He had so subjugated, you know, all those feelings in order to survive. And that was the very beginning of the whole, you know, path back to humanity, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, it was an act of waking. He repressed all of these feelings. They were repressed. They were there. They just were buried deep down. And Boston definitely provoked him into what he was doing. You know, also, it's so interesting in terms of his script, is that Boston is saying all the things that will be revealed to us.
Right. So then that
would
tied in all the little flashback that even tied in
Yes.
why he was so upset with the man that was the cripple, because that referred back to the fact that the dog had been crippled, and so that was just, to me, pretty much the most important scene, to see how the whole thing started going in his mind, and then all the other, when he found the baby, that took it way down the road. If we hadn't had that initial scene where they gave him a flashback of humanity, I don't think it would have happened.
Not paying any attention.
Huh?
Not paying any attention.
That really was foreshadowing, though. Don't, you know, what Linda just said, I realized that was a foreshadowing of I guess maybe the book and also the movie.
Sure. Sure. Oh, definitely. I mean,
Really
it
good,
sets,
not
it
only-
sets up what's to follow. It sets up the whole
But
scenario.
totally set it up, I agree.
But I would, we also have to remember, I gotta tell you, Rachel brought it up, the dog. That performance by that dog was extraordinary.
He
Yeah.
should have gotten an award.
Yeah,
The
maybe
dog
he
should have
did.
gotten
There's an
an
award they give at Cannes. I mean, the film did open at Cannes, and there's an award they give at Cannes for the best dog performance or best animal performance, and I'm
Wow.
sure that dog was considered. But it was moving. I mean, it's just the way that dog came out
Mhm.
was terrific. But
I'd love to
anyway,
see the sequel.
yeah. Marilyn, did you have your hand up?
I did. To me, one of the villains was the father. And of course, we saw him just for a few minutes, but he's the one who
Yes.
severed the relationship of this boy to his mother and to the dog.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that is really what set him off his life. And that's why he ran away. And when he did have connections, woman with the baby, that was able to put a bandage. And even though he had done so much evil himself, he really, I truly feel that he was going to be fine at the end. He was no longer that cripple, which I felt was key to the movie. But that father, and I think that we all have read about situations like that when a child is denied love by a parent and they're cold.
Mhm.
So that warmth came back to the people that he met, that beautiful woman who became this mother image. And again, just thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because in that scene when he runs away as a child, his father says, and there is a feeling of guilt. We talk about he is emotionless. He has repressed all his emotions, all his feelings, is repressed his past. And his father says to him, "Don't look at me that way. Why are you looking at me that way?" It's the guilt. His father knows he's guilty. And he just runs at that point. Is interesting. Each of these moments stand out during the film for me. It's just really a well-developed story. Visually incredible. So, Arlette?
At the very end, while he's holding the baby, and you see him and the baby, their hands are intertwined, and that flashback with him and his mother.
Mhm.
I mean, that was heart-wrenching, so heart-wrenching. But we do know about the rampant AIDS out in Africa at the time, and his father was just trying to protect him. Unfortunately, not in the nicest way, but it is reality.
Linda Hawk?
I have a question. I must have missed something on the movie, but I did read about it, knew later. But what did they do in the movie to show us that the mother had AIDS? I must have missed that.
She was lying there, and you could see in her mouth, and she looked feverish and everything else. And the hint of it was the sign. Sign at the beginning in the railroad station says AIDS affects us all. The sign outside the railroad station says AIDS affects us all. We come back to the sign at the railroad station again later on. So, without telegraphing it, overbearingly, it gave us the idea.
Yeah, I missed that connection totally.
That's all right. Now you got it.
Well, it wasn't crucial to know that, but I was just wondering what I missed.
The big sign. You missed the big sign.
Yeah,
well, I guess I don't pay that much to roadsides.
Yeah, but you have to pay attention to everything in the frame. I mean, it really is interesting. I thought one of the most interesting thing was the set design of his apartment. I mean, he had tapes in there, he had a TV, things he probably stole, that he had amassed in there. And then you go to her place in the middle of all of this, and it was so bright, it was clean. It was, everything, it was like it didn't belong there.
Well, she didn't belong in that whole type of setup.
No, not at
She
all.
was-
Neither did her husband, apparently, because you saw how well dressed he was in that photograph.
Yeah.
He worked at a factory, but I mean, it just gave us an indication of, again, this difference. And I thought it really did it well. Thank you, Linda. Rachel?
And I used to work for a school for underprivileged students, and they were about 18 to 24. And we had several situations. They were not loved. They were in foster care all their life. And so when I saw this movie, it reflected back on those days. And what we always did was I always went to the student that messed up, basically, whatever they did, got into a fight, whatever they did. And I go, I want to ask you a question. If you could do it over, would you do anything different? And don't answer me the way you think I would want you to answer. Tell me the truth. And they would look at me and I go, no, I'm serious. If you think you would do it all over again, tell me. And so this way we got to see the makeup of the actual person, because then they felt guilty because I reframed it and I made them think, because a lot of times if they weren't loved, they didn't have somebody to check on them, somebody to care about them, somebody to say, hey, wait a second, think about it. And that's what he was getting in this movie. In little tidbits that all came together to make him have basically redemption and hope. Because like I said, at the beginning, I was like, I don't know if I can handle watching this movie because it was just hard for me. And I'm glad I did, because the end was redemption and hope, that even this loveless child grew up to be a gangster, but could turn another leaf again.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? Well, before I discuss the next film, this reminded me while we were talking about it, and the idea of what was happening in South Africa, not only when I discussed where the book came from, but also in the early part of this century. There's a movie that opened last year, and it didn't get a big play. The name of the film is Origin. It's called
The
Origin.
caste system, the caste system.
Yeah, it's based on the book Origin.
Oh, I saw.
That was Wilkerson's book.
Yes,
Isabel
yes.
Wilkerson's
Wonderful.
book.
It's
I
based
saw it.
on
I
it's
saw it
based
too.
on the book. It's a brilliant film.
Wonderful.
That
Can you
is-
spell it?
It's Anna DuVernay is the director, and she wrote the film as well.
Yeah.
And it is a brilliant film.
Can you spell
Of-
it for me, please?
Origin, Origin.
I thought DuVernay was brilliant making it about
Yes.
her and putting it in because I scratched
you-
my head saying, how in the world is that ever going to be made into a movie? I could not imagine, and I was so impressed because she handpicked. She didn't do the whole, she handpicked 3 of the
Right, scenarios. Yeah.
and she just went into those 3. She did a brilliant job, brilliant.
Yeah, and tying it, because it was based on Wilkerson's own experience that
Correct.
brought her to the book, and it's just brilliant. If you have a chance, I know it's playing. You can rent it on Amazon and a number of different places. If you have Hulu, it's available. You can watch it on Hulu. It's just I got to see it this past weekend, and I was just blown away by it. I thought it was a brilliant piece of work.
Excellent also, excellent book.
And I tend to agree with her theories in the book, definitely. So next in 2 weeks, same time, same place, same station, we'll be doing another African film. because the
Yay.
theme is Africa. And the film is from 2015, was also nominated for the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film, and it won a special jury prize for Best Film at the Cannes International Film Festival. The title of the film is Timbuktu. Timbuktu. And it is a story, it is visually captivating. It is a visual story. Again, I tell you, watch the movie, look at the movie, see this movie, and it is remarkably resonant. It is the first ever Oscar nominee from Mauritania in Africa, which has no real film industry. And it's the story of a town, a family, and the people as it unfolds against the backdrop of a short but devastating occupation by Islamic terrorists in Mali. It is symbolic. Again, it's a very symbolic story. You'll see many symbols within the film, which I will go through when we talk about it. It is, without a lot of dialogue, again, it tells a masterful work that has international implications. So I hope you appreciate that as well. And I will look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
And
You
So stay
too.
dry.
Shelley.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Shelley. It was a